Welcome in. I'm Prim Saripapal alongside writer for ESPN, the magazine, Shaun, Assael, who revealed some eye-opening details about Colts owner Jim Irsay and his history with addiction. Now, after a DWI and a 6-game suspension, the 55-year-old owner did return on October 9th when the Colts beat the Texans. So, Shaun, a good chunk of your story, interestingly, actually focused on a woman Irsay had a long-term relationship with. They lived together for nearly a decade. She struggled with addiction as well. How do you think this relationship impacted him?
Well, I mean, the fact is that this is a woman he had spent nearly a decade of his life with. She dies tragically of a drug overdose 9 days before he's arrested in just a terribly inebriated state. The detective said that he asked him to stand on one leg and he couldn't. He couldn't pass the field sobriety test. So the story examines that relationship in great detail and why it would have such a devastating, her death would have such a devastating effect on him.
You also revealed some other details about his history with addiction. You also mentioned in there that the Indianapolis Star revealed that at 1 year, he actually had something like 120 prescriptions. What more did you find out about his history?
Yeah, I mean, he had from an early age, I'll say in his early to mid 30s, a number of surgeries related to his sort of heavy weightlifting. He had a number of joint injuries. He took pain pills for them. Those reliance on pain pills quickly turned into an addiction. So we talk about instances in 1995, 1998, and again in 2002 where he had brushes with the law, where he was investigated for getting overprescribed medications. In none of those cases were any charges brought, but in each step of the way he was counseled by at least one detective, and I believe also the NFL, to get some treatment, some counseling. By 2002, when you really saw the greatest alarm bells, in Indianapolis, it was reported that he had gone through 3 overdoses. He seemed to really turn serious about making himself better. And that's where the relationship that we reveal begins. It's a relationship, I think, tellingly, that Jim has never spoken about. And it took us 3 months of just knocking on doors in Indianapolis to even really learn the full extent of it. So for whatever his reasons, Jim has gone through great lengths not to want to talk about this relationship.
Addiction is a disease, and it comes in different kinds of forms, and we know that his father did have some issues with alcohol. Do you know when it exactly began? I know you mentioned 1995, but do you have any idea about his history before that?
He was a walk-on at SMU, a big weightlifter. Those were the days where he liked to hang out with his players. I can't tell you. I don't know much before the early 90s when he would have been in his early 30s when it began. But what I found is interesting is that we stopped hearing about these headlines a decade ago, and it jibed when he began to live with this woman who had her own drug problems. And I think you saw 2 people who maybe were going to try to set each other right. And what you learn in my story is that it wound up going very bad very quickly for both of them. And really what you read is tragic results for Kimberly Wundram.
Now, you focused on this relationship with this young lady, and also I want to go to his relationship with his family. His father, Robert Irsay, when he passed away, Jim was the one that assumed the responsibilities of being the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. And at 37 years old, he became the youngest owner in the NFL. Right. How much do you think that pressure played into all of this?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I think that if you do struggle with addiction, you have triggers that other people don't have. And I think it's probably plain to imagine that if you feel like you're having a bad day at the office, you might turn to these. On the other hand, I think you learn to try to manage those impulses. I think that that's somebody who struggles with addiction is taught to do, and I think that at various points in his life, he's learned to deal with his triggers, but not all the time.
So on October 9th, he returned from a 6-game suspension. What else does he have to do in his return or his recovery process? So
as a result of his arrest, he entered into a plea where he pleaded to a misdemeanor count of DWIs. A condition of that, he's not going to have to serve any jail time, 58 days suspended. He has to tell the court any time that he gets a new prescription. He had to complete a mandated court therapy program, and he's going to submit to regular drug testing.
What do you want people to take away from this story?
This was a mugshot that shocked the NFL. It shocked the sports world. And I want people to understand that there was a woman who he hasn't talked about, who was written about in passing in the local press, whose story was very much part of his story. And we wanted to give her her moment, and we wanted to show how two people who were struggling with each other had a breakup that affected each of them so enormously. And this mugshot, a lot of people had questions about it, and I tried to answer some of those questions.
Shaun Assael, writer for ESPN the magazine, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out the rest of Shaun's article on ESPN.com.